you can calculate an index called the Gini coefficient. And the Gini coefficient is a number that represents how much inequality of income distribution there is in a given geographical area. So you could calculate a Gini coefficient for a street or an area in a city or a state or a country. You can do it at all those levels. And what you find is, you always hear this idea that poverty causes crime. That's a classic left-wing idea, but it's wrong. It's seriously wrong, and it's importantly wrong, and it's definitively wrong. Not only that. So there's no argument about this. It's already been established. What causes crime, especially aggressive crime, is relative poverty. And relative poverty is not the same thing as poverty at all. It's seriously not the same thing. Poverty is when you don't have enough to eat. Relative poverty is when the guy next door has a much better car than you. So, and there's lots of relative poverty in the United States, and there's some absolute poverty, but even the absolute poverty in the United States is nothing like the absolute poverty, say, in places like India or in sub-Saharan Africa, where absolute poverty means you have nothing. Now, what's really interesting about the Gini coefficient is that if you go to places where everyone, roughly speaking, is poor, say by national standards, I think South Dakota was often used as an example, or maybe one of the maritime provinces, like Newfoundland, where there's low average income, but it's pretty flat distribution. There's almost no crime. And if you go to places where everyone's rich, then there's almost no crime. But if you go places where there are poor people and moderately well-off people and rich people, and the distribution is really steep, then the rate of aggressive behavior among young men, and it's usually within their own ethnic group, starts to skyrocket out of control. And the reason for that seems to be that if the dominance hierarchy is too steep, then the young men have no likelihood of climbing to a dominant position while playing the standard social game. And so what they do is turn to aggression to make their mark on the world. And it works too. That's the other thing, is that, make no mistake about it, if you're looking for status in a place where status is hard to achieve, and you're the meanest, toughest guy around, then, and around a bunch of people who, like you, don't have much money, then you're going to benefit from that status. It works. Yeah?
Would that be part of the reason why? Because I think the violent crime rate in the U.S. is higher than it is in Canada. Would that be part of the reason why?
Sure.
Or? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can make a real conservative argument for making sure that, the conservatives are very anti-income distribution, and we figure that's because of the guys that have this male independence. They identify with this male independence factor. They don't want to be distributing resources to people who are down the dominance hierarchy, because they want them down in the dominance hierarchy. They want there to be a difference between the people on top and the people on the bottom, so that they can be the people on top, so that it increases their relative attractiveness. Like, it's a perfectly logical game. And they presume that, well, the rules are set up, and like every man can go for it, do his best, and the winner wins and the loser loses, and that's just how it is. And don't ask me to fix it, because I don't want to, And besides that, I find it distasteful to attempt to fix it. More than that, right? Because it's a moral issue. It's not just an intellectual issue. So, however, you can make a case from the conservative point of view, especially with regards to, say, beliefs in religious traditionalism and the desire to maintain social stability, that you shouldn't let income distribution become too unequal. Like, one of the big things your society has to do is to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand, because it tends to get out of hand. It tends towards a few people having everything and almost everyone else having nothing. It's a natural, in a sense, it's a natural consequence of economic progression, which is actually something that Marx pointed out, although an Italian named Pareto had figured it out at approximately the same time, and I think with a lot more conceptual clarity. But the more unequal you let your society get, the higher the probability of death, roughly speaking, through violent causes. And but I'm telling you why it is that men want to climb the dominance hierarchy, and the reason they want to climb the dominance hierarchy is because that's how they get access to women. So now, this doesn't eliminate the difference in individual differences in determining who's going to be aggressive, because what will happen is that as the Gini coefficient pressure rises, the more aggressive men, the men who are more aggressive by nature, will get more aggressive first, right? So you can imagine it's a threshold phenomenon in some sense. So, and what I should tell you as well is the relationship between the Gini coefficient and male-on-male homicide isn't like 0.2 or 0.3, which is about the correlation that you'd get if you were predicting something like that using personality. It's like 0.8 or 0.9. It's like it eats up all of it. It's the explanation. So it's a huge effect. You know, it's so big an effect that you can basically say, oh, well, we figured that out, although psychologists never know when they figured anything out, and they keep endlessly retesting it over and over and over because, you know, we don't know how to bring our science to a stop. But if you don't accept the Gini coefficient aggression data, it's like you might as well throw the rest of social sciences out the window because the effect is unbelievably powerful.
What geographical area does this take place in?
You can do it at any level of analysis. You can do it by county, you can do it by city, you can do it by state, and you can do it by country. And it works on all of those levels.
Like it predicts aggression on all?
You bet. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, the methodologically sophisticated studies have done exactly that to ensure that it's actually this phenomena rather than other factors that might be operative in that particular geographical area. So countries with a higher Gini coefficient are more violent, and cities within that country that have a higher than average Gini coefficient for that country are more violent on average. It's a very, very robust finding.